Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. My name is Živile, I'm your host, and today we have another wonderful story to share with you. I'm very happy to introduce you to Michelle, who is joining me today. She's a founder, trainer, and coach, and she's also very passionate about developing and collaborating on projects around human potential for a positive impact. Her field of expertise is the intersection of neuroscience, somatic experiences, and psychology, which she applies in new concepts and frameworks. And currently, she is the founder of Rubik's Potential, a company that offers digital coaching sessions, training programs, and digital applications for self-development, mental health, and self-regulation and resilience. And we've met with Michelle in Pirate Summit a couple years back when I got selected to moderate one of the campfire sessions. And it was very interesting because I was just getting into the topics like resilience, mental health, kind of how can you thrive in chaos and still be in peace kind of things. And then I met Michelle and we stayed in touch ever since. I got back to Pirate Summit. And right now I'm very glad to welcome her on the podcast. So Michelle George, welcome to Perception Paradox.
Hey Chevelle, thank you for the invitation. I'm really grateful to be here with you today. And yes, I remember still when we met at the Pirate Summit, all the energy you brought, all the positivity. So I'm actually really, really grateful that we're still in touch. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we come up with today on our topics.
Mutual. I'm really glad that you are here today. And I guess the first question I like always to kick off the episodes. So how is your day running so far today?
Thanks for the question. And I'm going to be just simply honest and straightforward because I think that's what we're looking for. So overall, day was really good. I woke up slightly tired because yesterday was a bit more exhausting for my body with allergy parts. But otherwise, I'm super glad we have sunny days, which lifts my mood. I think that's once for most people, actually. I had a really nice discussion this morning, and I was excited to looking forward to this. And here we are.
Amazing. I'm very happy that we made it. And basically what we're going to talk about and this whole focus of this episode is on the mindset, habits, also values, and the mindful and resilient aspects of entrepreneurship, because sometimes we really kind of get so much into this hackers mode that we forget the mindful part of creating business and living life. So maybe we can start from this topic called resilience. Since I've met you, you were the advocate of resilience, mindfulness. So just to set ourselves in the same context, so how do you define resilience in the context of entrepreneurship? And why is it crucial to talk about that and bring this topic?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question because also there is some misconceptions about resilience, right? So from first classy resilience construct, as we know it, has 7 different factors. They consist of acceptance, meaning acceptance for the situation as it is, responsibility, so not just saying, oh, I can't do anything in this moment, so let's just leave it as it is. But with that comes also being solution and future oriented. What can I actually do to also adjust the situation or be better in the future? And then social contacts, as in this is my support network, they support me. And that's come also in terms of responsibility, you have self-efficacy, right? It's because obviously you're only ready to take responsibility the moment that you also understand that your actions have an impact, and that's basically is self-efficacy. And that comes paired with optimism, because if you also just believe that everything's lost anyway, you wouldn't start looking for solutions. So in general, I think that model's quite interesting. Then to point out what often happens is people think that they need to push through, and I can see that quite often in entrepreneurs, just like holding on just one more mile. I can see you smile,
Oh
so
yeah,
you might know that yourself from surrounding or your own experiences.
totally. Yeah, but like, okay, one more mind, but like, I mean, it is kind of an ecosystem and an area where we get into a fight or flight mode and we just keep hustling and there is never an end and the final goal. I don't know. If you're fundraising, you raise one fund, you know that you have already to think about another fund. If you launch a product feature, you know that you just launched a product feature and there is more product features to launch. You need to grow the team, etc. So is there a way to do that in a resilient way for entrepreneurs, or what's your take on that actually? Hustle
Totally.
mentality versus that need of like self-care in the entrepreneurial journey.
Yes. So to have the entrepreneurial journey, I like to compare it with a marathon, but with sprints. It's not one big sprint.
Mhm.
So that also means we need to take into consideration that resilience actually means you adapt to new challenges and specific situations, but not in one constant go. It means that you basically get up the resources, the energy if needed, but then also you recharge later. So recharging, recovering is a big part of resilience too. And I think that's what quite often entrepreneurs also tend to forget. It's the, oh, self-care. What's the first thing that I can drop if everything's burning? Well, maybe I just neglect my own time, my
Oh
own
yeah.
breaks, right? Maybe I just cancel the meeting with friends because I just sit down and I finish this pitch deck. And it's the understanding that actually this is what you need. So yesterday I presented the resilience model as I currently work with also in coaching sessions. And that means that you need to take care of 3 different levels when it's about resilience. That means you have your mental level, you have your emotional level, and you have the physical level. Anything cognitive is the growth mindset, agility. So the flexibility to adapt, the solution, future-oriented part. It's also the self-awareness, because I think you can only be resilient when you understand your challenges, when you understand what helps you. And you mentioned values and needs in the introduction. So understanding what are my values, my needs, means I can keep my balance. It means I can come back to myself to properly recharge. And for that, we need a self-awareness too.
How do you get there? Because okay, so let's put ourselves in the shoes of a founder who just raised Series A, building the team, and I mean it's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility, from accountability to investors, to your team, to the customers and clients. And when you think about finding time for your own care, in that kind of stage, you feel like, oh, I'm going to miss out on some important meetings. And you get this FOMO happening within. How do founders can actually start their journey into the self-care and resilience? Do you have any tools, tactics, what could potentially work as a starting point?
So for this whole model, you say what it gives you is an idea of where to start, because the nice message is that resilience is trainable. You can
Mhm.
develop it. You can train it, flex it as a muscle. What has helped so far, what I can see for quite busy entrepreneurs, they consciously plan in time in their schedules for self-care, or they work with a coach. So we have people coming in, entrepreneurs, either young ones, first ones, but also experienced entrepreneurs, and they just book their time slot. And after a couple of sessions, they understand that, okay, it's not just enough to book that 1 hour or 2 hours, but I also each day I plan in 10, 15 minutes in the morning, in the evening. And how you use that is up to you. But I think it's important to just check in with yourself in the morning and understand where you are. So here we're also with the physical level. It's about sensing, experiencing what's going on in your body. You can do that anytime when you're traveling, when you have lunch. So you don't need that big amount of time, because I know we're all missing that when we're busy building a business. You just take these micro moments from 15 seconds, for example, and you check in. And building that habit constantly will help you to understand where you are. You might want to take a course on emotional intelligence. Can be a 1 or 2 hours crash course. It can be you take 15 minutes with an expert and sit down and talk. just first to understand what's the whole map that you're looking at, and then understanding where do you want to work on. For example, emotions, and we had that today in a session, they all have a function and a need. And if you understand the function and need behind each emotion, you know where to go and what you need to balance. So you struggle a lot less. Basically, by understanding that and then sensing it, you remove all these roadblocks. You have a lot more energy. It means you also have more time to free up. So it's this kind of a cycle that either moves upwards or downwards.
And sometimes it takes just like, can be 10 minutes to start that habit and the mindful journey kind of thing. It can be a short walk where you walk without your phone, headphones, and sing with yourself. That what helps me actually. If I want to understand better how I feel and what kind of decision I should make, I just walk. Sometimes it ends up being a lot of kilometers. And you're being a founder and a coach and really into this whole topic. Do you consider yourself to be resilient? How was your journey?
It's a bumpy one. It still is. Because I was a lot on my head and my mind. I think due to my own life story of being an adopted person coming to Europe, I had to face a lot of challenges that probably feels natural for people. Like, I look different. So I, from a young age, had to try to understand better who I am and where do I fit in. But it also means that, and now we get a little bit scientific, so I hope that's okay.
Amazing.
Great. So from a young age, as I was not having a constant caregiver in the beginning, I wasn't able to connect on an emotional level, and we are regulated as babies from our caregivers. So we react the way they treat us and the way we feel safe with them. Now, if you're adopted, for example, and you have constant changing caregivers in the first months of your life, it means that you don't have this reliable person and you don't have a predictable, safe environment. So you constantly need to scan for cues as a baby. Is this safe or not safe? That means your nervous system is trained to be on alert. Compared to a baby that stays with the parents the whole time and gets snuggled and knows exactly what to expect each day, it's way different, right? So you know who comes to talk to you, you know who's going to feed you, you know how they're going to touch you, you know what kind of interaction you can expect. So their nervous system is programmed slightly differently. That means when you grow up, I had a lot more going on. So when there was a car exploding, I would jump simply because my nervous system says like, oh, there's danger. Today, that's a lot better. I can hear loud noise and still feel safe within my body because I trained that. There's still times when obviously, and I can see that with a test that I took recently, an assessment, it compares you also on your resilient level with, for example, high functioning executives or really great entrepreneurs that are experienced. So the comparison group in one is a little bit older, had more time to train their resilience, and compared to them on some points, I'm definitely not on the average, but below. And that gave me to think like, oh, am I, especially as a resilient coach, am I this low on resilience? But then I started from a very different point, and I'm not yet had that many different situations in business, for example, about tough situations. So that's slightly different because that journey is still developing. But then on other parts in life, my resilience level is quite high compared to others. And also for myself, I went through a big journey. So development of my own resilience has specifically over the last 7 years made a big jump, and it will hopefully keep growing. But I'm still aware that there's some things that are lacking.
Yeah, there is always, I think, a constant growth. I'm not sure if we can ever stop growing, then it means that we are kind of stuck. But before we jump into another question, you mentioned that you've just did some kind of test. Is it some publicly available test for resilience?
I did another because I love learning and as you say, constantly learn and grow.
Yeah.
And one of the latest trainings that I completed was with Sortify, and I can share the link with you later if you want to add
Oh,
that.
that would be great. We can also share it in the description of the episode.
Yes, exactly. It's not for free. So
Yeah.
I made the training certification to have the resilience. They work with AI and tech and give you a deeper insight, not just on how you rate yourself, but also on the way how you basically interact with the tool and what information you additionally add. So it works with also natural language models as every other AI. And that gives you a fuller understanding, because quite often regular assessments, if you understand how they work, it's easier to manipulate. And that's why I'm always a bit reluctant, as this also uses AI, which was thoroughly tested scientifically. This is quite interesting, and I can definitely recommend it. There's, though, a price, obviously, that you pay for your own assessment.
Okay, cool. Pretty interesting to check it out, actually. Talking about you and entrepreneurship, because this entrepreneurship, resilience, two things go hands in hand. How did your entrepreneurial journey have started? Were you always an entrepreneur, or it was some kind of pivot moment where the change has happened?
Was I always an entrepreneur? Part of me goes philosophical and like, what is an entrepreneur? But yeah, I guess part of me always wanted or planned to become at least independent and has my own independent activity. I didn't plan to become an entrepreneur as such. There was not a moment when I was thinking like, oh, I think I'm going to open a business now. But it was more, I entered into my first job, and then I gained a bit of working experience, and I was like, okay, how can I make an impact? And when they didn't prolong my contract at that moment, I had one last training to go to. I could choose that. And somehow I was thinking it's for project management, and I wanted to train my skills in project management. But upon arriving, I learned that actually it was a training about social entrepreneurship. And that was a part, of project management within social entrepreneurship, but in the description that wasn't clear.
Okay.
And I met this amazing, energetic young woman, Saida. And she told me everything about what she's doing, all the activities. And I was like, oh, I feel this. It burns so much, I can connect with that part. She invited me to one event to the other, so I was traveling the whole summer. And I met so many amazing, inspiring people. So I came home, sat down, and created my business. So totally different to probably many out there who first sit down and think and reflect and come up with a model and test and go out. No, I first sent off the papers, and then I had to learn the hard way what else comes with it and what you also have to pay for when you're an entrepreneur, because it's not just that you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So wait. Let's go back to the story. So you got home after this course. You sit down and created a business just immediately. You wrote how did that happen? You just registered the company and said, I'm gonna do this and that, or what's the story behind?
Yeah, so as most of the activities I was invited to were connected to social entrepreneurship, there was a summit and there was a summer school. So actually I did learn quite a bit. And I had a chance to sit down for 10 days and reflect on the idea of what maybe I want to create, but also learning in a crash course of how can you actually build a business. And then I thought, when you're young and you're motivated, you always think that this is enough. I know everything I need to know, so I can go and I can conquer the world. And yes, so that was my naivety that let me sit down and just register a business.
Beautiful. What was your business about?
So the idea was to support people in a very high level and division, to support them in finding their human potential and to live it. On the business model side, I was like, oh, social business. So we're going to work with companies and then they're going to bring in more profit. And that gives me the space to work with people that don't have money. I can give back to the community. And then with more profit that comes in, I can create a platform that actually offers jobs to unqualified people, because I've met quite a few that are very talented. And then it was with what I wanted to start off with the experience I had were trainings and workshops and programs. And that was the idea. And that was, I think, 2018, end of 2018, when I had all these ideas and sent in the papers. Then beginning of 2019, everything was okay because it took a bit of time as I was super unexperienced with the process. And then I sat down and started planning more in detail what I want to do. And when I was ready to go out, guess what? It was 2020.
Oh. Oh my God, yes. And 2020 happened and reshaped everyone's way. What did you do then?
I was quite lucky. I've got through network also together with other startups. So I could get in with my own experience of psychology, of neuroscience, and also with my vision of supporting people. So I started to freelance for another company, which at the same time also helped me with the finances. But I think I was lucky because I was able to connect what I wanted to do with what I was actually doing. So while I was learning new skills, I could always bring them back into my own project later. And I think quite often you have to choose either or when you're in financial difficulties, or you need to make a choice where to spend your time. So I think it was a luxurious thing. But it's also the moment when everything I did turned to being online. And that's why today it's digital learnings, digital trainings, still having offline workshops here and there because it's just a different quality. But a lot just happens online.
Yeah, totally. But it opened also a lot of doors, I think. Like people had to expand their mindset and it really kind of changed the way we work and the way we build businesses in a way. So that project, your business is still running. Is that something you're working now on?
Yes. I think, oh, by the way, because everything became online and I also was open for other opportunities, that's how I got back to Manuel and that's how I came to Pirate Summit.
Okay, so for the ones who don't know, Manuel is a co-founder, CEO of Pirate Summit, a really great conference that was happening in Cologne, in a very, very unique setting, vibe, and yeah, the conference we're gonna miss a lot. But I'm pretty sure the concept will be back in different setting.
It definitely became an important part of my life too.
Yeah. I think it's for everyone, and like who were involved in any way as a participant. It's kind of a very meaningful place to connect and get the conversations on a deeper level, not only just about the money and startups, but about a lot about the mind and connection.
Yes.
I really, really enjoyed it so much. I learned a lot there and met cool
Same for
people.
me.
Okay, so then you started working with Manuel and Pirate Summit. So that was kind of a great thing for you that happened during this time, yeah?
Yes, and it was also for me that part of human connection that really helped me to refine also balance in a way, because entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey. So I think it's just important you find these people around you that support you and where you share the same values and give you this feeling of belonging, to be part of something bigger. Because otherwise, if you have the feeling you're just in a corner, you might receive a lot of constructive but pushback feedback also. It can be tiring. And this was really, really nice to work with them. It gave me an introduction on no code. So you asked me about my current activities. Yes, I still give the workshops, I still do coaching. So that came up more and more as I'm from profession a psychologist. So now I do offer lots of coachings for entrepreneurs, but also through my whole journey, also with the previous startup, that opened the door to the path of building the digital applications to actually support people in their personal development and also the resilience journey.
You mentioned about values that kind of were shared when you started working with Pirate Summit and so on. Maybe you can elaborate more on like what kind of mindset, habits, and values were guiding you through this journey. Do you have something that is specifically highlighted, or how does that work for you?
So let me start with the values and the vision probably. What was always important for me in the big part was the collaboration, but also mutual respect and the willingness, the vision of creating an impact. But then also when it's about respect, it's about seeing the other person for who they are, respecting what they can do, but also being completely honest with each other and being reliable. I think in a world where everything happens so fast and people just come and say like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and they disappear again, I found that often exhausting. you know?
Oh yeah, I know. Especially that everything is super nice and cool and everyone is very enthusiastic, especially in the tech conferences, and everyone is a friend and a friend. A lot of ideas, but I also noticed this tendency to disappear, tendency to talk more than actually execute and do things. And it gave me quite a lot of food for thought last year when I kind of made a break from the conference world to a bit redefine my direction, values, and so on. And I've realized, oh, it's a lot of fun, it's a lot of talking, but where is the action we're doing? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's an important part, that one paired with also the authenticity and vulnerability, because for me, it's important in order to give my best. I also myself need a space where I feel safe. So this human connection in a way needs to be there. And I know people sometimes function also differently and they say, I just want to keep this very professional. But still, the part of authenticity, humanity, and trust are also values that for me are quite important when working with others. And sometimes I made an experience that along the way, when it became super stressful, respect was lost, frustrations built up, and you just had a feeling leaving meetings that wasn't so great. And I never experienced that, for example, with the pirate team. No matter how stressful it was, they were always respectful. There was always a bit of fun and completely honesty also when things were just, everyone was overwhelmed because, as you know, events can get super stressful and chaotic.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what definitely brought us together. And then I think the slogan of making business more human was definitely also a big part of it, because I like to work human-centered. And I think in everything we do as humans, human as a person will always be there and hence cannot be neglected.
Yeah, totally. Make business more human. I love it. And talking about challenges when you're an entrepreneur, when you're building businesses, so how do you handle those challenges actually? And especially uncertainties, because, one day is good, another day is a down. One day you have a project, another day it gets canceled. And it's always a roller coaster. And before you, let's say, make it into a stable business, lack of stability. And I think many people also the fear is bigger of that uncertainty than, I guess, their wish to build something different. How are you handling this?
Yes, I think here is, as mentioned before, having the different factors for resilience that come together is this self-awareness of understanding who I am, what can I do, what are my strengths, but also what am I lacking. So when I see opportunities, for example, I know where I can go because I know this is either what I still can learn and develop in that direction, or it's totally not for me. Because if it's totally not for me, I just drain. So self-awareness of my strengths and of my resources, also of my social network, is super, super helpful, especially in uncertainty times. Then regulating emotions is another one, recognizing what's going on, understanding what can I do in that moment, because if I'm angry, it might mean a boundary of myself got hurt. So what kind of boundary? What do I want to do? And understanding emotions in stressful times is my compass. How do I otherwise handle it? It depends, honestly, also on my day. If I'm having a, let's say, biological good day, I'm more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm honest, sometimes there are moments when I lay down and I cry just to let go of the stress. Or I know others might go running, but boxing also helps. So for me, just boxing it out, that's super helpful. Singing helps. When I'm overwhelmed, otherwise, I might sit down and I write a list because that's brain dumping. So it's very, very different. Sometimes I'm very solution oriented and in a way of actionism. So there might be a challenge and I might find 5 solutions. I'm like, okay, what makes most sense? But in order to find the best solution, I first need to regulate my emotions. Otherwise, I might take the one that's just the easiest, but not the most helpful one. So I think understanding how my body works and how my body and my brain together work has helped a lot. And then recognizing my patterns of how I react, and I just seeing if it's helpful or not.
Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I like what you're saying, that we tend as human beings to choose the easiest solution. The question is if that's the best one, or you should put more efforts. But I think it's in anything in life. And what about the role of vulnerability in this process? Is it important? Does it have a role? Because like as founders, we kind of supposed to be strong, resilient, take care of everything, solve problems. But then if we are not open and we tend to suppress emotions, we can clash as well. Do you think it's important to learn how to be vulnerable?
Yes. If later we want to come back to what has worked for me, if you ask me that question one more time to add a few things, because obviously
Yes,
my brain
of course.
later gives me some more. But yes, about vulnerability. I totally think vulnerability is what we all should work on more, especially as entrepreneurs. I made an observation over the past years that people talk a lot about vulnerability. As you yourself said, there's a lot of talking, but then the execution might be lacking. So sometimes you also see vulnerability as in, oh, I now share what has happened. But I think it's also an important part of sharing when it's happening. So not just when you found a solution, because obviously then you're already true and you've solved it. You're not open, you're not vulnerable, as in someone who could come and either add something meaningful or hurt you. And I think hurting is here a very important factor. So myself, I think I also open up and be vulnerable in a safe space. Obviously, it's not necessarily that we should be vulnerable as in openly posting something on LinkedIn or on stage when we're not emotionally stable. And it could put us down even more.
I think so. Why do you think it could put us down? Because I've noticed also the pattern. It's quite an often right now to have a talks and start sharing some personal stories. What's your take on that, actually?
About sharing personal stories?
Yeah, because you mentioned that it can be it can damage someone even more if they open up in public.
Yes, I think if you're not ready for the reactions, if you just bluntly and blue-eyed, let's say, share without being aware of any consequences, it might not be the best solution. Because vulnerability also means being authentic. It means opening up. But then it's also, I guess, something where you need to feel safe up to a specific point. Because again, if we're not feeling safe, it will be a threat. And if we feel threatened, it's a down spiral. So I recommend to go and open up first in a smaller circle, right? It can be with people that you trust. It can be a co-founder. It can be with someone who's not an entrepreneur at all. It doesn't have to be an investor. It's not always the best situation, I guess, to go for an investor and share like, I feel depressed at the moment. I'm not sure if I can work anymore. But if you go to another founder who's been in a similar situation, and we have now sharing and caring circles, for example, and different communities where people come together for a certain amount of time, one time per month, and they share bluntly everything, but it's a small space of 4 to 6 people. There are rules that what happens here stays here. Nobody else will learn about it outside. And in the beginning, we also check, are there any conflicts of interest? So we wouldn't put an investor and a founder in the same circle. Not if they're doing business together or might be doing business. But you can put founders together that go through similar experiences. And it has helped them a lot to share and feel less lonely and to unmask, to not just have this mask up in your face of, yes, I need to be successful and efficient. It's not just a glamorous, romanticizing entrepreneur, but it's also looking behind the scene and seeing all the challenges. So vulnerability is also the core of all emotions. It's our capacity to actually experience emotions. And we all want to feel connected with each other. So that also means we need to show who we truly are. because only then can we form these authentic relationships. And I think that's what Pirate Summit has been doing so well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the authenticity of the event and the spaces that were created actually to build the connection and to dig deeper were, I think, very special and very unique with this intimate settings, not too many people. Work to the whole team who's been building that for so many years. And it's still a legendary conference that everyone is talking about and sharing the principles, even in other spaces. So I feel great. I know that I would like still go back a bit to the resilience, but since we touch base now on vulnerability and entrepreneurship, I think very interesting a bit to dig deeper. Do you have your own kind of story or experience when vulnerability, some kind of embracing vulnerability or some led to some positive outcomes in your journey?
So let me share with you. Last year I received a grant for a project, and we applied to create a self-development app for autistic people. At that moment, I was working, and I say back then was a friend, but also a colleague, and we knew each other for years. I think more than 10 years. And we're working together for 3 years. And that person was an autistic person. So that's why we came together, because myself, I was not deeply into that project or topic yet, but we combined the strengths. And 2 months after receiving the grant, after we started the project, the person decided to actually leave the project. And the way that happened was very upsetting to me. And it was obviously quite emotional. I was overwhelmed. I was sitting with a project where I was not an expert on the main topic, which was autism. My main topic is self-development. But for anything that has to do with an autistic person, there was so much for me to learn, and I had so little time because the project was set up for a year. So for a couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks or so, I was just knocked out. I was emotional, and I opened up to my network, to some people that really helped me. I talked to also a mentor. She guided me along nicely. I talked to my coach. I talked to other entrepreneurs. And their support helped me to find a way through. They also opened up basically opportunities in a way of how I could move forward in active support. And I think if I'd had played that out as in, oh, it's fine, I might still be stuck in that moment of being overwhelmed, because I would put up a lot more energy of making it look as if everything is fine and not spending energy on actually moving forward and solving the situation. So that's one that's very recent that's happened, and where I can say that, yes, that has helped me definitely through.
Thanks for sharing. Actually, I've just had also a conversation recently with a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur, and we were outside in the nature, and we were kind of a bit talking. Do we have any regrets in life, or how is our journey? And somehow we stumbled into the very shared similarity with both of us. We don't really know how to ask for help, and we always tend to pretend and to act, not to pretend, just to act as independent, strong women who can do it all by themselves. And I think learning how to open up and sometimes to ask for help or support or guidance, it's a very big strength and can help for every entrepreneur to actually move way faster and to remove the blockages along the way with the collective effort. So
Totally.
yeah.
I think it's also relevant as that to deepen your relationships. So I have 2 more situations. That's not necessarily just how it helped me forward as entrepreneur, but also as a person.
Yeah.
So one is with a friend who's also independent, and she's more of an artist, so totally different direction. But it hasn't been long, and also during COVID times, there was a moment when we both just shared like, currently everything's just so, sorry for the word, shit. And we just openly shared.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
But yeah, just, sharing how tough it is, and the financial situation, and the worries, and the uncertainty, and then how people disappear and they make promises. And we had similar experiences. They're from very different perspectives as in what we're doing. And that just was like, okay, it's more than just how's your week? Oh, it's fine. It's this and that. We could openly share, and you're not alone in this journey. And that created another deeper connection.
Totally, it's pretty important and crucial to find someone who is on a similar path, similar journey, because yeah, if you haven't tried that, it's hard to resonate and to empathize with the challenges you're facing. So I think it's always a good, maybe for founder, to have a friend who is actually also building something or going through same challenges. And then this way you can connect and lift each other up when it's needed and celebrate as well when someone maybe don't understand that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Yes, now I just want to share the second one.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, we had one of these circles coming together, and circles that are actually meant to open up. But then we had also a person coming in saying like, how much can I share in this? And we've been here for quite some months. And for me, obviously, it was in the beginning surprising because I was like, oh yeah, sure. And me also setting up the sessions. I was like, oh, should I frame this different? But then we all discussed it together. And we had a very deep conversation, sharing about our own thoughts, about previous experiences in life, and what leads to these thoughts or feelings. And just by having that simple question of how much can I actually share, and do I feel connected or not? And then everyone actually entering that conversation and being totally open and vulnerable. It just created such a strong bond again in the group. And it actually was supposed to be the last session. But the group together said like, well, it just feels like we started. So obviously we can't stop now. We're just going to continue. And that was
Oh,
a very
wow.
beautiful moment.
That sounds like a very beautiful and strong moment. But then immediately I've just got the question based on this, how much can I share? Do you think sometimes being vulnerable, open, can go against you? Because sometimes we can also see in the older societal kind of more conservative ways that opening up too much can actually play against you. What are your thoughts on that?
As said, I think there's always a right time and moment, but mostly also the right people to share. So I wouldn't, as said, go necessarily and just say in front of an investor like listening, I had these feelings for a whole year and I don't think I can do this, but I still would like to get an investment for you for the next couple months. But then again, as said, you should be feeling safe in a way. So there's insecurity, right? Totally. But if you're not sure that the person in front of you has also good intentions, just be a bit more mindful and see, can you also take it depending on the reactions? If you openly share in a big circle of 100 people and there are 5 people coming to you and like, I don't get what you're saying, this is totally crap. Well, you should be prepared for that kind of reaction and answer in a way. You know what I mean?
Yes, oh yes. We need to learn how to react because it's just an external circumstances and different people perceiving the world different way. And it's not us who thinks this way, it's someone else. And we know the truth, they know their own truth. And sometimes I think we put too much effort on reaction rather some kind of proactive solution. Yeah.
And practice solution, I think that's a very good one. And that again is why vulnerability has a lot to do with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You might know or experience it yourself when you share with someone how you feel, and it might be you sharing that you're not that good in that moment. People might just come up and say like, oh, this is a solution you could do. Because quite often what happens is when person A shares their emotion with person B doesn't know how to react to that. They might feel uncomfortable themselves. So in order to feel less uncomfortable, they come up with a solution. They start talking. They're not giving the space. Whereas all person A would need is just some space and just be with them.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's very difficult, and that's you learn it through mindfulness, I guess, and practice and some kind of self-growth. Interesting. All right, one more thing now I've got to in my mind that really resonates a lot when I think, oh, Michelle, it's Ikigai. I think, 2 years ago you were running some workshop about Ikigai, and now it's all over the European media. Everyone is did Ikigai come into your life, and maybe you can briefly describe what is it on your
Yes.
views.
Yes, thanks for mentioning that, because when you asked before what actually has worked for me and also in terms of resilience, I think Ikigai as the philosophical and practical model has been playing a big part. And it entered my life beginning of COVID, I think, around the time when a friend brought a book to one of our co-working spaces. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I started reading. And I found it so interesting. And then there were 5 pillars. It was not about the 4 circles on how to find purpose, but was the whole philosophy behind, with the 5 pillars of what is Ikigai. And the 5 pillars are actually, you start small, then you let go, you find harmony and sustainability. It's about discovering joy in small things and being the here and now. And these 5 pillars.
No. I'm just listening now. So I'm now familiarized myself with the Ikigai method a lot. Actually, I've just finished reading the book when I was traveling through India.
Yes.
But what you were saying right now, start small, let it go, and joy in small things. How do you do that in this crazy busy environment nowadays? Like, it's easy when you're in some smaller villages, nature, traveling. But when you, let's say, in a bigger city, it sounds challenging.
Yes, I was it last or 2 years ago, spoke to different Japanese people, and for them, they didn't get that there was this big hype of Ikigai now in the Western world, and also they're not talking openly about it in everyday life. It's more of, as far as I understood, a concept that's integrated in the society, and that's also why on one hand, they have and live Ikigai, while on the other hand, they sometimes get a bit more depressed in society.
Okay.
So how to have it in daily life? So for example, with the start small, I'm a visionary. Everyone who knows me personally knows I dream big. I have like, oh my gosh, this is what we can do, and you can add this and here. But then it's always about the small steps. Same with personal development. You start small, you take one step after the other. And definitely it's sometimes frustrating because you don't see these big jumps. You don't see an overnight success.
It's hard.
It is.
We
but
like
then
to have fast success, fast rewards, fast dopamine.
Totally. And Ikigai is actually more of taking the small steps. But then at some point, you look back and you observe the way you've come. And then you can see how big the step is you made from last time you looked back. So same for me, each day I start small. It's not that I have a big habit of resilience and I do that consequently each day just for the sake of having it done. But as said, it can be a small one. It can be a 1-minute sitting without computer, without laptop, without anything to scroll through, without noises, just being. That can be already enough.
Oh, yes. That's a good start already. I have quite an interesting story if I can jump in to share. So I've been always this girl, all in, always hustling, always multiple projects, always not being able to do small. And that obviously led me to overworking, burnout, being tired, ruining my health. Very interesting. And it's, of course, very sad that sometimes the realizations come when something goes wrong with your health. But what really brought me to this Ikigai philosophy, what I've connected later on preparing for this episode, it actually were my wish to heal and go back to normal life because I was facing huge back pains for the last few years, and it got really severe a year ago. And I was just listening now to you and connecting that I did not immediately start from my mobility exercises every day for like 1 hour, 2 hours, etc. I started very small. It was 10 minutes. 10 minutes just every day to show up and to do something, even just to lay down on the floor if I could not move. 15 minutes. And then gradually it just started evolving and growing and building it up. And once you have one thing growing and evolving, you have other things actually falling into the place, and from the mind presence to the stuff. So yeah, it's quite interesting that it took me a very different journey to implement Ikigai. And right now I actually use this kind of start small and the whole philosophy into the daily life, work, lifestyle, and so on. So yeah.
Yes, and I think we should have more of that, right? And then for the second one too, it's the let go. So it's let go of what doesn't work, but also making the hard decisions of letting go to spend time with people that might not be good for us. And it's not, it's not necessarily locking them out completely, but it's just minimizing time. And it's also not running away, because I know there's a lot of that going on out there too. It's like, oh, you give me that feeling, so I just walk away.
Yeah.
Right? It's also working through it, trying to solve it. But if you see there's nothing that improves, if you see it's just one person putting in the effort, I think it's not worth spending so much energy on it if it's draining at the same time, because people are there to also make our lives better in a way. And yes, you go with them through hardships, but nevertheless, I think on average, they should be there to make your life more beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a partnership collaboration, right? We kind of want to have friendships and people, but we lift each other up and support on the good, but also on the challenging times. Always
Yes.
when you hit the wall, I think that's when you can clearly see who is your friend and who really cares about you, and vice versa. So yeah, I agree with that. But letting go,
Totally.
it's very important to understand where you spend your energy, and it's hard.
Exactly.
We have
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
mean,
we hold a lot of memories usually, and we tend to live in the past rather than focusing on the present. What do we have now? Yeah.
exactly. There's an interesting psychological concept behind that, right? They also say the more time you spend with someone, the harder it is to let go, even though, rationally speaking, there's no reason to hold on anymore, but just because of the time we spent.
Just because of the time, or there was some more science behind
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Because we think that we invested so much, it's kind of, we spend so much time, we invested commitment, and then how can you break something where you put so much effort, right? It's like just relationship.
Exactly. And then also, what has helped me a lot to let go is the need for control and perfectionism.
A need for control and perfectionism. Can you elaborate more?
Sure. So when I was younger, I definitely had a strong need for control. And I mean, in some ways, it's still there, but not as strong anymore. And I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, there's so much going on, so much to do. You just can't keep up with everything all the time. If you do, please share your secret recipe, or maybe there's some things that you're missing. But what I found is that there's so much coming, of opportunities, and then you try to do this, and perfectionism, it's like you work 80% of your time for this 1% of perfectionism. But then I realized there's a lot where people, when they hear it the first time, for example, they don't have previous experience. They might just get not overwhelmed, but they don't see this 1% you put in. So there you can step up with 80%, maybe even 70%, and still deliver, right? Because it's just for you, these last percents of perfectionism. And then same
Yes.
for the need for control. And I here think for a lot of people, micromanagement might be a thing. But then you just also, and that's also why the slogan for Rubik's Potential currently is grow with the flow. It means you find your flow zone where you find challenges, but you're still either up just, touching and having enough skills, or you might need to improve a little bit on your skills. So you're in the flow zone, but it helps you keep growing, which at the same time means you don't get stuck and perfectionist up to a specific moment, and you're not controlling up to the end, but you're also flexible enough to go into the right direction.
Yeah. Do you still often experience the moments of being perfectionist, like especially now building your businesses? Or you learn how to navigate?
I learned how to navigate. It's more of checking and then seeing, like, it's the kind of thing where you say, I do what needs to get done, and I spend enough time as I have to, but not more as I need to, which is not meaning you deliver just shitty results or you're lazy, but it's really knowing how to be efficient in your time.
Oh, yeah. I can relate to that. I used to be actually both micromanager, both perfectionist, tried not to get these things against me and to just give full trust in people and then see if it doesn't work out, what's the worst can happen. And if I would have listened to some of my friends about launching the same podcast or business, I would have never launched the thing because it's never good enough. The website is never good enough. How do you present yourself? What kind of brand image is that? And we can always make it better, but I took the approach more like learning as it goes, because you have to start somewhere. We all have different starting point. We all have the gear we choose to grow for it. So I just accept it and define what kind of good growth is for me and following it.
Totally agree on that, especially that you just have to deliver at some point, because otherwise, if you keep working on it and it's perfect until it's perfect, nobody else able to give you feedback. Nobody will know.
Yes, and then us opening up for feedback as well can be a challenge. How do you deal with feedback? Were you always good at receiving it?
No, and the closer the person is to me, the more difficult it gets. Interestingly, but obviously it's also because that has, a different relationship with a person. But I think currently I'm quite well in receiving feedback, because you can receive feedback in a way that it's a gift. It's up to you to choose what you do with the gift. Do you keep it? Do you open it? Do you use it or not? But also the gift does not necessarily have something to do with me. So it's unlocking it or deconnecting it from me as my personal value. And I think that's what I still quite often observe. People take it very personal.
Yes. I used to take it personally so much. I was so bad at receiving feedback.
The same back in the days. And I think once you manage to let go of that part, it becomes just so more helpful, and it helps you to grow. Because, if you're ready, you can sit down and reflect and see if this is actually true or not. And if so, what can I do with it?
Yes. And also just to filter, okay, is that something like proper feedback, or it's just a comment and thought, and kind of also separating what is a good feedback, what is just a personal opinion that maybe should not affect your work. So yeah, nice.
Totally.
And we just jumped from the Ikigai and going back to Ikigai, right? So how do you really bring it to your life and implement it, right? Like we spoke about start small, letting it go, and I think there were a couple of more things, no?
Yes. So I think just saying we're still on the Ikigai because it's part of what we let go.
Okay.
So that's totally...
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's true.
And we're talking about the practical parts, right? The resistance of change, the idea that I need someone else's experience to actually build my business, or that I need someone as a co-founder to get started, letting go of just the idealism and move into actionism, as we just said.
Yeah.
And the fear of failure. I think that's a big one. Letting go of the fear of failure, that it paralyzes you.
So that can paralyze. How do you let it go? Like, it's quite difficult, because also I was talking to quite a lot of people about that there is another side, fear of success. There are some people who, after some therapy, also admitted that actually I think I was not succeeding because I had a huge fear of success. I wasn't sure what I'm going to do when I reach that point and what's going to happen.
I think for both it's the same. It's an emotional situation where, when we're in coaching sessions, we sit with the emotions, but also with the uncertainty, because for both, It's what happens, what comes afterwards, and how will it change me as a person. So it's sitting with that, sitting with eventualities, digesting and processing the emotions connected to these eventual situations, but then also understanding that there's nothing life-threatening as our nervous system wants to tell us. And then once you went through that, reminding yourself each time, it becomes a little bit easier step by step.
It's like a muscle. You just keep training it and keep getting better, better, better. Okay, so that's part of letting go, yes? What else do we have ahead on Ikigai?
We have harmony and sustainability, and I think
Harmony
here,
and sustainability. Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, I mean, we know you said before that sometimes it wasn't sustainable, so it's the question of how
Yes.
can I build structures that are sustainable for me, including recharging and recovering.
Mm-hmm.
And again, here it's the values and needs. So I love that part, self-awareness, coming back to it, because otherwise you might drip into or fall into a burnout or depression. But it's also, do I work in the way that it's in line with my values, that I feel at peace with myself? And I think what held me back when I was younger was harmony with others. So if that's disbalanced, it's also not a healthy way, because then you forget about moving forward for yourself. And that's just finding this balance between sustainability and harmony.
Mm-hmm. Harmony with others. You mean when it comes to the connection, relationship, and having shared values, let's say, with them, or how would you define it? What kind of situation would it be?
If you also go into harmony or kind of conflicts, like
Mm-hmm.
avoiding conflicts in general,
Okay.
so you do everything for harmony and you're more busy dancing around other people than moving forward.
Straightforward. That's a tough
That
one to get out of it.
so can be a bigger journey, because quite often there's something hidden behind that's connected from beliefs that you collected when you were younger. It can be from bad experiences. So here we have, on a deeper level of neurological level, to change your neural network, but also changing your habits of behavior. And quite often, even though we understand how we should behave and what we can change, we still get confused because we can't do it. And that means, again, emotions are connected, memories are connected, and you should work with the beliefs that you have to let go of the not helpful beliefs. And then you can become into your balance and into your power and energy.
I think lately working and getting into a lot of different holistic kind of approaches towards how to release the energy, how to heal trauma, and so on. Reading a lot about that for the last few years. Do you have your own tools? What works best for you when you're trying to, when you're going through this kind of healing, let it go part? Is it like more holistic way? Are you going to like, you also, I know that mentioned the psychotherapy and the power of just talking.
Yes, so when you talk, you're on the cognitive level quite often. When you're on the somatic level, you're more on the emotions and bodily levels. So yeah, for my own approach, I'd like to use all of that together, because I think you need to tap into all levels, as also I talked about previously in the resilience model. And I do have a coach I work with. I'm part of a coaching circle where we also coach each other a lot. I'm also, if needed, going to a therapist, not necessarily because I'm like deeply depressed, but just generally because I want to deep dive a bit more. And then there's also the different physical activities that can help a lot. So there's for the emotion part, for example, from the last trainings that we did or that I finished, you have a whole process to work through that either takes up 5 to 12 sessions, depends on how big the topic runs. And that's the same that I use for myself to deal with these situations and to basically resolve what's holding me back.
Yeah. I really like what you said, that we don't need to look for some kind of therapist or coach or guide when we are super down or we think that we need one. it's like a maintenance of our mind and the body, and it kind of should be part of the integration of daily life in a way.
Totally. And I think it should be part of it's what I'm trying to get into also. We have one project that's like a side project with volunteers to have the educational part of self-care and resilience and learning different techniques for young people, and to implement that also in Luxembourg in a non-formal educational system, because that's missing in school. And if parents didn't know how, they can't pass that on to their children.
In every single school across the globe, including within general cultural kind of studies, how do we communicate with each other? Right now, I've just had a panel about also diversity at work. How can we work with each other if our brains are functioning different way? It's not that it's not that we are labeling, but understanding actually human and its behavioral patterns, and how just simply we think and react and accept information, perceive information. So I think it's kind of, if we would have learned that early from the early age, that we would not need any categorization or labeling.
Totally. And I think when you're young, it's a lot easier to accept that and integrate it. And then later you don't have to constantly think about it. So that's why I think it's important to just start as early as possible. But yeah, coming back to harmony sustainability. So another part is building these sustainable projects and relationships if possible. So not just superficial relationships, not just projects that I do on a whim, but really building on top of each other, both on the people side as also on the business side.
Harmony and sustainability. If there is anything else after that, or these are the three core pillars?
I think too that are still important is discover the joy in small things, because
yes,
right, that's a nice one.
Yeah, I like how it sounds. It a bit also reminds me of this like now very publicly communicated gratefulness. Be grateful for things, small things. So it's very in sync. So totally just signals your brain immediately and changes the narrative. I think it's a very good thing to start your day with gratefulness and something you're happy for or thankful, because you just wake up immediately with a good positive resonance rather than taking your phone and starting the scrolling and getting exposed to the negative news that's happening in the world. This immediately will really put your day down in a way.
Totally. And it's also in a way of how do you define success? Because if we just wait for the big success moments and milestones, you just burn out in the meantime. So it's like, how can you find joy in daily situations? And it's proven that if you do that, for example, for 4 weeks, you choose and find 3 positive things each day. And not just the same, because then you're on autopilot, but really consciously looking for 3 different positive things each day. You're going to reset and reprogram your mind. By that, you have a lot more emotional resources again.
How long does it take to reprogram your mind?
Well, with this activity, you can see quite an interesting change when you do it for 4 weeks.
Weeks, okay.
Which isn't too long, and you can do it in less than 5 minutes each day. So I think it's an investment worth, and if you see there's no additional value for you, you can always stop. But I haven't had one person who said it wasn't beneficial.
4 weeks, 3 times a day, you find something positive? What's happening during the day, or what do you do?
4 weeks each day, you find 3 things that are positive. It can be any time throughout the day.
Okay, anytime, 3 things of a day that are positive for 4 weeks. And that should help to basically increase your, I guess, approach towards life, towards the day, and find more positive moments.
Yes. It can be like, I wake up and my cat was lying in my arm. It can be there was sun today, or I had a nice cup of coffee. It can be there was no traffic jam. Whatever comes to your mind.
Amazing. Okay, I will try to do that. I hope
Let
the
me know
listeners
how it
as
goes.
well. Okay. Today is day 1.
Perfect. And yeah, the last one is be in the here and now. Because as you mentioned before, yes, our mind can already be on the next project. We can be on the next go, on the next call. But just be still in the moment. and be present. And that helps a lot to take out the speed, because there's always coming something more up. As an entrepreneur, you always have something going on. There's always the next project, the next meeting, the next deadline. And then at some point you might turn back and you're like, what do I remember of my life? Sometimes it's really just being here, enjoy time with people that are there, and just be in the present. Enjoy the sunshine for a minute. You have that time because it's what makes life meaningful.
It's what we prioritize, right?
Yes.
It's all about the values, prioritization, etc. And I think it falls back into the stage of life we are in, the different health situation, financial situation, family situation that makes those priorities some kind of shift in a way sometimes. But ideally, I guess if you really find enough mental space to prioritize here and now, that's really rewarding, I would say. And I hope
Definitely.
everyone at some point in their life can get to that stage earlier than later. But even if it's a challenging time, maybe being aware of that, it would help to grow faster and to move faster because you're kind of energetically you are here and focused.
Definitely. And I think we can see it in conversations. I think one of the toughest challenges for me when I was going into psychology and being a coach was, where's my mind? Because sometimes a person would speak from daily conversations and I would already form my answer instead of really being here and just listening and then coming up with my answer. It's okay if that takes 30 seconds or so, but it's more meaningful, because I'm here. I also give you the space to talk if needed. And then it's about you in that moment. It's about our connection. It's not about the future. It's about the here.
The social media and the distractions made it way through. Sometimes I really like to go alone to eat or to travel. And usually what I try to do when I'm alone, it's like either I'm reading or writing or observing. I really love to observe, especially when I'm in a foreign country. And last year I moved to Asia. And I think the most shocking part for me when it became my daily life in Singapore, anytime I would commute, I would go to wait in a queue. They love queues in some cafe. I would always observe people being on their phones. Always. In the metro, while walking, while waiting with a group of friends, fully on their phones. And I'm like, wow, that's a new reality or new presence actually where people are present by being online and the connection is getting smaller and smaller, that direct connection. So yeah, so I really appreciate always when there is someone with whom you can talk and who puts the effort not into the notifications but actually in one-on-one conversation.
Totally. Maybe just the next course on that because it just popped up in my mind. Kids are unlearning today more and more, and parts of their brain regress because they unlearn or they don't learn to read emotions. They don't learn to read faces because they're constantly on the phone, and they don't train their brains. Because if I see your face in real life and I can see your small reactions, your micro expressions, my brain will register a lot of data. So it needs to learn and develop quite a lot to, digest, understand, interpret, and react to it. And so when parents, for example, are more and more on their phones and not giving attention to their kids will also, first of all, learn that they're not so important, but secondly, they also miss to develop that part of the brain. And there's been studies showing that actually these kids today are less experienced. They have a lot more trouble recognizing emotions in themselves and in others, and that part of brain looks a bit different.
Oh wow, that's pretty interesting because I don't have kids myself. I have people in the environment who have kids, and everyone has different philosophies how to raise kids, what tools to use, what not to use, and I think when we have such a fast changing environments and everyone is competing, how many languages your kid gonna know, how much coding kid will know, etc. And then I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't know if there is one right way, but seeing toddlers with the iPads, it's a bit scary for me.
Well, I mean, maybe in one of the next sessions, you're also going to have a complete neuroscientist who's just on that part.
Yeah, that would be interesting, actually. Quite
I'd
a conversation, how it does affect our brains and the evolution of that.
be super interesting, definitely.
Okay, I noted on my basically it can be a great tool, great way to be more grounded and actually to build the resilience in a way while
Yes,
going towards entrepreneurship, right?
totally. Yeah. I definitely recommend looking into the philosophy and seeing what works for you to also make your life a little bit more resilient and more relaxed in a way.
Yeah, I really liked the book, and you have the series now on Netflix as well about people living secrets to people who live long lives and so on, which is also like Ikigai vibes. So I think it really can help us to biohack our lives through rather than just taking on the pills, but to live longer. So I have one more question, some question on one more part that I would like to ask you. Building a business, building an entrepreneur, and if I'm correct, you chose that nowadays known hard way to build your business, right? You chose a bootstrapping way. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Why did you choose to build your business this way rather than going for fundraising?
I think in the beginning it was because I was also unexperienced. I was already learning so much about how to build a business, but then also realized when I was part of different programs, people always constantly ask me, how are you going to scale? What's the tech part of your business? I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I want to build a business. I want to support people and
Huh?
let me run my workshops first. And then I
Yeah.
can think about scaling. And it took me quite some years to get to the point where I can even think about scaling and how to implement everything that I've learned and what it can do and opportunities, the resources I have, how to scale that. And still today, I don't feel like I want to go for investment, not in a classy way. There were projects where we, as mentioned before, we received grants. There's no equity, no shares involved, no investors pitch deck. There's presenting the idea. There's a committee that chooses you. So I guess in that way, it might be a bit similar. But I guess it's also different as in if the grant doesn't get accepted, you just adjust the project and either you find a new grant or you keep doing it with the resources you have available. There's not a pressure to grow fast. I think that's a different way as in, do you want to grow fast? And then do you want to grow sustainable or you want to grow fast and sustainable? And I found it from the talks I had with entrepreneurs and observations, there's still a big challenge to make it fast and sustainable.
But that's what is happening now, right? The kind of the concept is changing, but it's not about the unicorns, it's about building zebras. But the thing is that it's still there is a need to be fast.
Yes. And I think, as you can see with the Ikigai, I'm sure you can also implement that with still starting small, but it's different to how I currently work. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but for sure, for the moment, this feels more of me and more in line with my values and with the kind of people that I want to work with. Ask me again in a year. Maybe then something has changed.
A lot about the harmony, balance, the ikigai, different techniques to build the resilience. But do you really think that having that harmony and a bit of a balance works along with building a fast growth scale up?
I think you need it even more than if you would not. Simply because, as said, resilience means that you adapt to challenges and your challenges will be a lot bigger. So you need to perform better at some moments, which also means you should recover harder. You should recharge harder. Because otherwise you're just dragging yourself through and at some point you either end up in a burnout or there's such a horrible mistake, which you should have seen, but you didn't, that the whole thing will collapse at some point.
Is there anything you would have done different so far in your journey?
It's a good question. It's a tough one.
Oh.
Because I also believe in the butterfly effect, meaning that I believe one thing leads to another, and I'm not sure if I've changed something, I probably would be in a very different place. And
Probably.
I like where I am at the moment, including the challenges. And I'm not sure if I would like the challenges in another place more or less. So let me reflect for a moment. Would there be anything that I would have changed? I think I would have started earlier with my self-development, because that would have helped me to understand early what it actually is that I'm building. And once I understand what I'm building, it's easier to collaborate with others. Because if you do that too early, you just get pulled in every direction, or you start building something that's not your own, but it's more of another person's idea and vision. And then you realize at some point, like, oh, this is not where I wanted to go. And I had to learn that the hard way. So I think that would be the only way where I probably would have been more mindful and started earlier with working with a coach, for example, working with different tools on self-reflection and so on.
So if someone who is right now feeling the same way, that maybe, yes, I'm building something, doing, creating, or craving for the change, let's say, one of the things they can do is to find some kind of a coach with whom they resonate that could help initially to start the changing process.
I would say yes, because you have a limited possibility to reflect. There's always a blind corner, blind spot that you have, which you can work on if you go into conversations, discussions with others, feedback. But a coach has a different level, as they have different tools. So that's a third solution. And then there's always one part that remains unconscious and subconscious. Subconscious means we cannot tap into it. Unconscious means it was somewhere close to the surface at one point, and we can take it back up, either through feedback from others or work with the coach. But we should be aware we're always going to have one blind spot.
Absolutely. That, or one blind spot that you don't want to look deeper, and then maybe it's time to do it. Okay, so is there anything else you would like to share when it comes to your resilience, life philosophy, Ikigai? Maybe you have something still pondering on your mind, but we forgot to touch base.
Yeah, I think I could go on and on, obviously, because it's a topic that I really love. So I'm really grateful that we were able to talk about it. I just share and say, like, listen to your body. And I know lots of us are in our minds, because it's a society that requires you to be a lot in your mind. So just for everyone listening, just check in with your body, sit for a minute in stillness, see what comes up. Can you connect with your body or not? Just the first start, if you haven't started yet, the first step on the journey.
Will it be something that the audience could resonate, or you have a question for the audience to ask so they could ponder while they're going through the day? Usually it's kind of a small tradition that I ask every guest to ask a question that could lead through the week and make us think a bit about different things.
This one is a tough one, I guess, but I still love it. And it opens up so many doors. Why do you do what you do?
Ooh, that's a good one. Why do you do what you do? That's a great thought and question to close up today's conversation. I'm pretty sure, I hope you will be back and we could elaborate and continue in a year from now to see also how did we grow and what has changed, because things are changing all the time. Final question, Michelle, where do people can follow your journey?
So people can find me either to the website, which is rubikspotential.com. I also happy to share the email if there's anyone who has some questions or want to deep dive on the topic. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. Just reach out, send me a message, and I'm happy to get in touch.
Thank you so much. We will share it on the comment section, Spotify, and other channels. And thank you for joining Perception Paradox and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, curious to see who your next guest is going to be.
Thank you everyone who joined today's Perception Paradox and the Resilient Entrepreneur episode with Michelle's Mindful Blueprint. We're going to see each other in 2 weeks, and right now dive deep into the question, why do we do what we do? See you next time. Thank you. Hey!